Last time, after coming home from the great war over resources, we blew 33 hours of accumulated dust off of the labs and fired them up to research towards the great triad of early game pollution reducing techs. We have upgraded all 800 stone furnaces to steel ones, and after closing the door for potential new biter expansions in our now enlarged territory, installed 3000 solar panels to match our steam power plant's max capacity. The third and final target is efficiency modules, through oil gathering, which completes right now. To actually continue on the research path towards efficiency modules, we need to unlock the trigger technology of oil processing by mining up some oil with a pump jack. But thanks to Playing Mike getting sidetracked building useless seawalls or whatever, he's nowhere near ready to do so. So instead, we slot in Landfill first, for two distinct reasons. Reason 1 you already witnessed at the end of the last episode, where we bridged over to those biter expansion sending traitors on Spitter Island, and we reinforced their home with some great quality walls. The second reason we'll get to later, and yeah, I still didn't build them all, so it's probably gonna be one of those painstaking things again. Anyway, during all of this, Playing Mike has actually been useful for once, and hooked up not one, but 2 oil sources. And we can finally select the entire remaining research path towards efficiency modules. And yeah, at a cost of 6 million resources and over 10 hours of research time to get through the 550,000 science packs, we will indeed have plenty of time for a couple more of those painstaking projects. But first, we need to reinforce resource supply towards science, because with a 1000 times science cost multiplier, we are spending millions of resources on techs instead of the usual thousands, and even after researching just a handful of cheap early technologies, both iron and copper for both red and green signs are starting to struggle, including that combined 15 million worth of iron ore purely dedicated to green signs. Oh man, and we're not even doing blue signs yet. Instead of reinforcing all 4 ore streams individually, we stopgap the resource problem by simply splitting up and slotting in the idle iron and copper from the old military supply line, which made 264,614 red magazines for us when it was in its prime, and we simply hope that this solution will hold out for a while we do more important things. As it will be quite a while before we will actually be able to use oil for anything, we start storing up all the oil in this modestly sized 0.4 fluid tanks. We don't really want to process more oil than we need with basic oil processing, because the advanced oil processing recipe gives us twice the petroleum gas per oil consumed, but it costs 75 blue science packs to unlock. That means we will need to store up about 0.12 tanks of petroleum gas right here. This is the exact amount we'll need to unlock advanced oil processing once we've got access to blue signs. And so I can safely fill up these tanks with petroleum gas now, and then simply stop petroleum gas production completely once we start making those 75 blue signs packs. Oh right, 75,000 blue signs packs. Well, Landfill is complete, and this seed somehow spawned several small stone supplies scattered around my starting area. So here we are, mining out all 4 of them and converting it into Landfill. Well, actually there are 7 of them, but 3 of them are in the land where the council wouldn't give us construction rights. Those nature conservists said something about disturbing the delicate balance of the biter expansion decoy chunks or something. Anyway, speaking of biter expansions, it is time to find out if our early game pipe laying adventures to deny the biters construction rights of biter bases on top of our desired remote resource patches has actually worked or not. But why would we go out and explore the entire map yet again instead of doing useful things like, working towards modules or blue signs or... Well, this time we are armed with solar panels, which means we can freely plop down single solar panel powered radars all over the place, so we can keep eyes on what's happening in this world. Well, at least during the daytime. And when I say all over the place, I mean all over the place. Yes, after yet another painstaking project, we now have complete radar vision on just about the entire map. And I'm happy and slightly surprised to announce that literally 0 of our early game pipe protected resources have been compromised. That was unexpected, but that's great news for the success chances of this playthrough, as our backup resources are, for now, still all accessible. In the meantime, we have learned how to make plastics now, but it will take another hour and 40 minutes before we figure out anything to do with it yet. So we proceed to Painstaking Project Part 2. Making fish farms on the water? What? Why? Mega base building. With every new oil field, pipeline, ore mine and transport belt we build out on the map, green expansion chunks are sacrificed and turned red, lowering the effectiveness of our magical anti-biter expansion system. To the best of our understanding, every 4 minutes the game selects 30 chunks at random and then simply picks the greenest one to send an expansion to, with ties being randomized. As a refresher, if that selected chunk is one of our Decoy green chunks in the base territory, the entire biter expansion simply won't happen due to the 8 chunk max travel origin sync. But that method of simply select the greenest one of 30 randomly picked chunks thing means that the fewer green decoy chunks there are compared to the total number of possible chunks, the more biter expansions will actually happen somewhere in the world. This is bad, because that will eventually create a never-ending ocean of continuously linked biter expansions protected by masses of terrifying behemoth worms. You may notice that there are no expansion chunks on the water, as biters cannot go there. But what actually is a water chunk? Well, it's always good to check the most simple solution first, and as it turns out, if 10% or more of the chunk is a land tile, the chunk becomes a valid target for enemy expansions. It doesn't matter if the land is an inaccessible island or completely landlocked or scattered around. Or in other words, if less than 90% of a chunk is water, it is a land chunk valid for biter expansion. Do you know what else is considered not water? That's right, landfill. So here we are on the lake, not making fish farms, but making more decoy biter expansion chunks. Each 32 by 32 chunk contains 1024 tiles, which means as soon as we place landfill tile number 103, the chunk is now a valid target for biter expansions. For ease of placement and travel, I use the outline of the chunk to place the landfill, which at a cost of 124 tiles per chunk is slightly wasteful, but it does make for a cool pattern. Anyway, the biggest waste is the landfill cost change in Factorio 2.0, making every tile cost 50 stone instead of 20, which has major implications for the main cost of this landfill excursion. From every 9 chunks, we are filling in the center chunk completely. All 1024 tiles, which represents over 50,000 stone worth of landfill. More than in the 8 surrounding chunks combined. During pre-game testing, I found that the game's display of green circles and expansion values are not telling the entire story. Despite the landfill chunks displaying the exact same 1.000 relative expansion chance as the landlocked tiles, the landfilled chunks almost never got selected for some reason. But if the center chunk becomes more and more landfilled, the difference becomes smaller and smaller. And when the center chunk is fully landfilled, the difference between my weird landfill islands and the naturally generated landlocked chunks disappears completely. At the time I theorized there is a hidden multiplier where the game checks the adjacent chunks for land percentage and multiplies the highest one's land percentage with the displayed expansion chance, a mechanic which would be useful to lower the chance of uninhabited islands being selected. But currently we think the game simply does semi-random checks if there is actual space to build a biter base in the selected chunk or any of the 8 adjacent chunks, and if it doesn't find enough space, the selected expansion chunk is re-rolled up to 3 times. You can see this behavior in practice when a very forested chunk without sufficient space for a biter base is selected for expansion, and the biters simply walk up to an adjacent chunk with free space and settle there. Anyway, biter expansions can happen up to 7 chunks away from any existing biter base, measured out in a pixelated circular fashion, for which I made a blueprint, because of course I did. This way I can determine how far out I need to go and which chunks can be ignored. We don't go less than 3 chunks away from a biter base either, as those chunks will be red due to the biter base's own proximity. Now, these landfilled decoy biter expansion chunks are within the 8 chunk max travel distance of existing free roaming biter bases, which means expansion parties will form. But then, since they cannot pathfind over the landfill like I can, I mean, you need some seriously long legs to walk over this tiny 1-tile water gap. Since they cannot pathfind, the expansion party will simply disband again and rejoin a nearby biter nest. Any nearby biter nest. I'm sure that won't lead to any problems whatsoever. Anyway, here we are drawing the final landfill line between these chunks, and you can see the green chunks popping into existence on the minimap. And the system is working. We have placed 53 green chunks on the lake so far, and one of them is blinking. Nice! My map contains close to 30,000 chunks, and an estimated 4% of them are decoy green expansion chunks, which means approximately 70% of all expansion attempts will be debated and fail. That means that fewer than 5 of the 15 expansion attempts per hour will actually happen somewhere on the map, which is already pretty good. But imagine if we could expand to 10% decoy green chunks. Then the chance of 0 of the decoy chunks being a part of a random set of 30 chunks drops to about 4%, which means fewer than 1 expansion per hour will actually slip through the cracks. Now, that is a goal to aim for, so we're gonna be sure to keep mining for landfill, despite the insane stone cost. For now, I have spent all of my stone mined so far on these 53 chunks over here, so we gotta wait for more stone to be mined. Each 3x3 chunk area costs us 100,000 stone, and not all fully landfilled center chunks can fit 8 minimally landfilled chunks around them. Anyway, we still haven't researched modules, but at least red chips is done now, so our plastics now have purpose. Well, I kinda forgot red chips don't just need plastics, but also a ton of copper and some iron. And I also kinda forgot just how much time it takes to hand-build mining and furnace setups, especially in the way that we are doing it, with the mining sites being miles away and all of our belting efforts being focused on saving as many pollution-absorbing trees as we can, all the while being forced to flow through tiny snaky chunk corridors to save as many decoy expansion chunks as possible, which leads to the logical path being literally true blocked off biter bases, as that is where the red chunks originate from. We then get further delayed by deciding not to throw together a quick red chip setup just for unlocking modules, but as red chips are also a direct ingredient in the upcoming blue science pack, instead focus on doing it properly from the get-go. That might have been a bit of a mistake. Red chips by themselves will need more resources than red and green science combined, at a whopping 7.5 belts of copper and 3 belts of iron. We start off by mining this giant 13 million copper patch, which can provide half of the copper or so, and the northern iron patch can provide all of the iron. But as I'm not sure if I can fit the entire smelting infrastructure in my tiny base area next to the science infrastructure, we set up separate steel furnace stacks specifically for red chips out here in the north, sacrificing yet another minimal but noticeable amount of green expansion chunks in the process. So yeah, by the time I'm actually back in the base with my smelted belts of copper and iron plates, not only have we finished researching both the efficiency and the productivity module without even having produced a single piece of plastic yet, let alone having started on the red chip design, but we have even started researching the 500,000 science pack costing 10-hour research project of quality modules. Yeah, here we don't want none of that AI generated slop. On my channel, we still write quality with a capital K. Next time.